college students here, and like there's an interest in the main campus, like in taking these classes, not just the middle college, you know? That's silly.
Well, I mean, for a couple reasons, I'd like to keep teaching.
Yeah.
One is because the 401k that they've given me from my 24 years
Yeah.
here, if you take money out of it, before you're 70 and a half, you pay extra penalties. And so I'd rather not do that. But I'm not actually planning on using it anyway. It's hopefully something that I will be able to bequeath to
Yeah,
my
like
kids.
yeah.
So perhaps we'll be able to just live off of our retirement incomes.
Yeah.
It should be fine. But it's also, when I have like a couple of weeks off
Yeah.
and I don't have anything that I have to do, I go crazy.
Your
I'm not-
YouTube channel
I'm not-
could blow up though, finally. You could be the next
there's
big
just-
YouTuber.
You know, I mean, I have all these books I want to read,
Yeah.
you know, but it's like when I'm teaching classes, I want to read some more on James before I do James, read some more on Kant before I do, you know, and that kind of the schedule structures what I'm reading. Otherwise, I'm just kind of like,
You should have a comprehensive book list, because I keep like a running tab on my
oh,
computer.
wouldn't that
with
be
books
great?
I want to read.
Wouldn't that be
That'd be fun, like a little part.
That would be neat.
I just don't see why having extra, you know, couple classes here, like this is such a big campus and so many like lecture rooms are empty during the day, that, and we've made it work this semester, and I don't think we've like have burdened any other classroom that was already here.
Well, plus, I think I'm taking advantage of YouTube. For those that couldn't come here, I made it clear to as many people as I could that I was going to try to copy
Yeah, and that's
what I'm
really
doing,
helpful.
so that if coming in the main campus would have been a burden, that they don't have to do it. They could skip it.
That's so helpful when the bus like isn't here. I always just like when the bus is like late or whatever, yeah. And I think it's sort of ridiculous that, like, don't think it's any burden for the teachers to be here, you know? I don't think that
There's
would.
extra I did have to buy a sticker, parking sticker.
Oh, come on.
Plus, I mean, you know, some of the traffic and the weather driving the Glen can be pretty terrible. Yes?
I have a question. You can finish talking to her. I don't want to.
Oh, no, you're
No,
fine.
I'm talking to anyone who,
Oh, okay.
I'm talking to God,
He's talking
actually.
about
God and I have, we go like this.
I'll take it.
It's Bill Almighty, you know?
For sure.
And hey, I would mop the floor. Yes, I came into a building and someone had an extra bucket and said, "Would you like to help?" Sure, I would.
Oh.
You don't know what movie I'm.
I do know the movie, but I didn't see it like that.
Morgan
Like-
Freeman.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it like that. Like I seen bits and pieces of it, but not the whole movie.
Well, what was your question?
Oh, so you have a class for summer 2019 philosophy. I don't remember what.
Well, I should have two.
It's one that's in class. I'm enrolled in the one
That's logic.
that's online. And then there's another one.
It's in intro to logic.
So I have a question. Is that one going to be like this course is? Like, with the attendance? Because I'll be out of town for a month.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
I'll be doing the same thing, using the camera to record it for people that are away,
okay.
especially during the summer.
Yeah.
People-
My
you
summer
hear-
travel is right in the middle
you know,
of.
people here like to
both.
do weird things, like go out and make poor little fish that are hurrying someplace late for something. Because they catch them, take pictures, and then they put them back. So of course, by the time they catch up with the rest of their school, they're late. That's a joke. Make fish late for something. That's it. The fish had a schedule. Who am I stealing that from? I can't even remember. it's Matt Hedberg. I can check. We still got some time, right? 4 minutes. Let's.
Late Night with David Letterman. Please welcome Mitch Hedberg, ladies and gentlemen.
I said Matt, it's Mitch. This was when he was not dead yet.
Thank you. All right. I was going to say, how's everybody, but then I refrained. Did anyone see me at a Letterman show? No? All right. All right. I know that 4 million people watch that show, and I don't know where they are. I cannot locate them. But I believe that, that's my dream introduction right there, You might have seen this next comedian on the David Letterman show. But I believe more people have seen me at the store. And that would be a better introduction. You might have seen this next comedian at the store. And people would say, hell yes I have. He likes kiwi fruit. Yeah. I didn't like kiwi at first because I thought it was like watermelon. I thought you had to spit out the seeds. That was a risk doing that joke. This jacket is dry clean only, which means it's dirty. Dry clean only, all right, here we go. Here we go, I'm ready to go. To the bar. Hey. I think a rotisserie is like a really morbid Ferris wheel for chickens. It's a strange piece of machinery. We will take the chicken, kill it, and impale it, and then rotate it. And I'll be damned if I'm not hungry. Because spinning chicken carcasses make my mouth water. I like dizzy chicken with some mashed potatoes. You can't please all the people all the time. And last night, all those people came to my show. I got watermelon in my teeth. I feel like I got free watermelon in the bag, and I've been overindulging. I opened up a yogurt, and underneath the lid, it said, please try again. They were having a contest I was unaware of. But I thought I might have opened the yogurt wrong. or maybe your play was trying to inspire me. Come on, Mitch, don't give up. Please try again. A message of inspiration from your friends at your play. Fruit on the bottom, hope on top. I'm so unanimated once the cameras are rolling. At the wrong time to be unanimated, I would say. All right. I can't wait till this set's over because I have a roll of lifesavers in my pocket and pineapple is next.
Have you ever seen him before?
If I made an orange juice, I wouldn't be so hardcore on people. I would be more polite. Like, I would not print shake well on the carton because you don't know how good people can shake, I would write, shake to the best of your ability. They don't have a diagram that shows the uninitiated how to shake. All right, put it over here, then put it over here, then put it over here quicker. I like to work in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a very exciting town. And, I work at the Riviera Hotel. There's 4 comedians on the bill, and we all had similar hair because we were all using the Riviera in-house shampoo. It was 2-in-1 shampoo. 2-in-1 is not a good term because it's not real. Because 1 is not big enough to hold 2. That's why 2 was created. If it was 2-in-1, it would be overflowing. I like to play blackjack. It's my favorite game. And my friend is a blackjack dealer, and on his forearm he has a tattoo of an ace and a jack. See, I'm a blackjack player. On my forearm, I'm going to get a tattoo of a 10 and a 2. Then maybe later a king. I wish 12 was a game in Las Vegas. All right. I basically said the joke again. I get up in the morning and I make myself a bowl of instant oatmeal, and then I don't do anything for an hour, which makes me wonder why I need the instant oatmeal. I could get the regular oatmeal and feel productive. I like Kit Kats unless I'm with 4 or more people. I work at this club in Nashville, and it's a 5-night-a-week club or something. I wasn't getting very many laughs, so the club owner took me aside. He said, "Mitch, you're not getting a lot of laughs. You're gonna have to vacuum." He made me vacuum the club. It was embarrassing. So I told the next guy, "Hey, y'all gotta start laughing. Otherwise, don't drop anything." Were they a good crowd? Yeah, they were neat. Some comedy clubs, they hand out comment cards. Those are rude. I don't like those. Like, I'll pretend this is one here. Like, people fill it out, there's a name and address, and there's a line that says comments, and people write down what they thought of the show. And sometimes people write negative things, and that's not necessary. Like I read something say, "Mitch sucks." Then you look up above, it has their name and address. That's right, I do suck, but I got a lot of free time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
That wasn't the one.
That's good,
There's
though.
one sketch where he does a thing about the fisherman who just wants to make the fish late for something. How? So, first thing I wanted to do was to continue with the Pragmatist, because we were looking at William James and Charles Sanders Peirce. And I always, when I'm talking about William James, I always also bring up Josiah Royce. So Josiah Royce is not considered a pragmatist. Notice he's an idealist, a philosopher. He's also completely homegrown. His student days were at the University of California and Johns Hopkins. So notice he's, unlike William James, who was trained mostly in Germany, Charles Sanders Peirce was just trained in the New England area. But Royce is California, pretty amazing. His father was one of the settlers in California, farmer. In any case, Josiah ends up being invited to Harvard when, as I understand it, when James is on his year in Edinburgh to give the Gifford Lecture. While James is there and Royce is at Harvard teaching the courses at Harvard that James would have given, he does such a good job that when James gets back, they decide to have both of them. And it's also interesting that Royce's house on near campus in Cambridge was right next to James's house. And that's kind of interesting because as a result of that, they walked to school together and had lots of time talking with one another. And historians are upset about that because that meant that they didn't write letters back and forth. And as a result, there's no record of their disagreements and how they argued with one another and so on. They were good friends, of course, but they still argued over their various philosophical positions. So it's kind of upsetting that people don't really know all the back and forth between them. Also, the year after James gave his Edinburgh lectures, Josiah Royce gave his, and his were published as a book also, and his book is the source of religious insight. Sources of religious insight. Which, by the way, is, I should have mentioned this, the varieties of religious experience, the James book from the Gifford Lectures, is completely on the web. So you don't actually have to go, for example, and buy it. You can check it out at the library, of course. It is amazing to me, though, that at least the last time I checked, and it's the sort of thing I might check every so often, because I always love to say that even though it was written in 1900, that book is still available in bookstores usually, because it's such a good seller. That's one of those important books. And yes, it's on the internet, so if you just search on the internet, you can find it as a full text available on the internet. And so is the sources of religious insight. So you can just look it up and read it. And I think the prose is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if it has to do with the time period or what, but I found reading Josiah Royce, it was absolutely fun to do because he is so clear. His language is so it's such good English. It's like, gosh, we don't have many authors that do this anymore. I don't know why, but for some reason I just really liked Royce. And of course, the interesting thing is he gave speeches all over the place like James did. That was kind of the thing to do. I mentioned Louis Agassiz as well, did that. So that was kind of a thing to do for academics, at least the popular ones. And while James, in his book, The Varieties of the Religious Experience, doesn't argue that a particular God or anything is true, or although one of the things I want to do is talk about the question of truth for a pragmatist. But James doesn't argue that a particular religion is true and all the others are false, or anything of that sort. Instead, he, remember, examines about 20 and argues all these religious experiences go to show that man is made for a religious experience. Psychologically, it's very good for us. Remember, the main thing that comes out of them is that we recognize that there is something greater than ourselves, and that we have a relationship to that, right? And so James looks at it from a psychologist's point of view. He's not being a theologian. He's looking at it and describing the psychological benefits of being connected to a religion and so on. By the way, that I think is still in vogue. If you read contemporary Charles Murray and his book Falling Apart, which I'll explain this. Notice the full title, Coming Apart, The State of White America, 1960 to 2010. The reason he focused on white America there was because when he wrote The Bell Curve, he got in such hot water with so many people over their misreading of the book, by the way, thinking that he was arguing that race is associated with intelligence. And actually, there's places in the book where he specifically denies that that's something you should gather from that, unless you have 2,000 races or something, not the so-called races that biologists tell us are false. You know, they're not really genetically determinable. We certainly can identify individuals as being different, thanks to, of course, the fact that we are different. But notice there's only one race, the human race, that we're concerned about there. But since he got in so much hot water, still does. I don't know if I mentioned, but he was the speaker that went to Middlebury College March a couple of years ago, and the students almost had a riot and did injure the professor that accompanied him to that, to try to keep him from being able to speak, etc. So he obviously is shy of the whole topic of race. And so in order to avoid any such conflict in this book, he specifically just limited his research to white communities so that no one could say he was trying to say something about racial differences. And the two communities that he focuses on in this book is Fishtown in Philadelphia, which is kind of neat for me personally, because whenever I would fly into Philadelphia airport, get my rental car, the very first place Don and I would stop was the McDonald's in Fishtown. It's just, you know, because we hate arriving at relatives' houses hungry, you know, so we go to the McDonald's first, eat something, and then go to their house and discover that they had made dinner and were waiting for us. It's kind of annoying. So Fishtown, I know where it is. And by the way, I was just there the other day with my Oculus Rift, because my understanding is that since he's written the book, Fishtown has changed dramatically. And as far as I can tell, it has, but still not enough that I'd want to live there. And then the other community that he contrasts with Fishtown is what he calls the super zips. And the differences between the super zips and Fishtown when he did the study was Fishtown was a working class white community, but the males had stopped working the second time, right? So it's a contrast. You look at it the first time as middle class, working class community, blue collar workers. But the families held together, they went to church, they raised their kids together, the families stayed together, they were married, etc. Right? So a healthy community, basically. In the contrast, the second look at that same Fishtown community, the men were no longer working, they were on drugs, they didn't stay married, so the mothers were basically the welfare moms raising their children. So the four characteristics that he is able to identify that you need in order to be a community that holds together. These four characteristics are: one, you have to be honest with your fellow men, to be an honest person. So trustworthy. That's the same sort of thing that Francis Fukuyama argues for in his book Trust. Right? So you have to be able to be honest with others so that we can trust one another. Right? Second thing is you have to be industrious. You have to work. There's no just lounging around. I suppose if you're, I'll find out. Once I'm fully retired, I'll find out if I get in trouble. I don't think I could do it though. I'm itchy, you know, to do something. But then you have to be married and stay married and raise the children together. These are sociological comparisons. So if you look at healthy communities versus non-healthy, these are the characteristics that make them different. And then the fourth characteristic is you have to go to church every Sunday or Saturday, depending on your religion, I suppose. But the idea is you have to go to church once a week. And he says it doesn't even matter which church it is. But what's important is that you feel part of a community. And that, like it's okay, it's your day to bring the potluck, or something. So you've got to do things, and you're raising the children in this community, right? So that this sense of being connected to the community. So honesty, industriousness, staying married, giving a family a stable family to grow up in, and then being religious in the sense that you're part of a religious community, etc. So those are the things that help the community stay together. Do you have a question? No.
I'm stretching.
Okay, sorry. And by the way, the other community that he uses as a contrast are the super zips. And notice the super zips are essentially stable communities both before and after. So as a kind of a sociological comparison. And what are the super zips? You could look those up. It's become kind of famous since he mentioned that. There are even books, questions. Do you live in a super zip? By the way, the answer is no. There are no super zips in Alaska. Sorry about that. But here's like super zip maps, so you can find out where these are, etc. That's the kind of house you live in if you're in a super zip. Some of the characteristics of being in a super zip is both husband and wife. So notice all four of the other things all stay the same too. You have to be married, you have to be going to a church every week, you have to be honest, and you have to be industrious, right? But the other characteristic that seems to be significantly different in the super zips is that both husband and wife have attended either Harvard or Yale or both. Both. Right. So double plus educated kind of families. And notice they hang out in these so-called super zips. And yes, you can actually go on a map and find these various places. They're kind of interesting books. I don't see where the map is, but they have them. So do you live in a super zip? Where are they? There they are. There's our super zips. And of course, those are basically you have to be making $250,000 a year each to live in those. So interesting book. If you're interested in Charles Murray. But going back to So when Royce looks at the sources of religious insight, he agrees, of course, with James in a lot of things, that religion is psychologically healthy for us, good for the community, etc. There's lots of other things about why that would be, too, of course, because it creates a common meta-narrative that's shared among the community, and that gives you also the same set of values, so that basically you've got a reason for the community to feel like a community. So it's kind of discouraging to see a lot of folks encouraging communities to become diverse. I understand why they're arguing that, but you look at France's lead on this, the nation France, right? What you see is they invite diverse individuals into their community, but their goal is very clearly to transform those new migrants into their community into French people. So they're not planning on transforming France into a culturally diverse society. They're planning on transforming the incoming migrants or immigrants into French people that have French values. so that France remains France, right? You see how that works, right? So the valuing of diverse people to come in is okay, provided that over the space of several years, or at least a generation, those families become French people and enculturated in the French language, the French values, and modern, right? So of course there's all sorts of conflict you can imagine with Islamists moving into France, expecting to be able to keep their Islamic culture in a modern European country, France especially, when of course what the French want to do is take their children, teach them French, and have them become modern French teenagers, which of course you imagine it absolutely creates a hellacious situation for the Islamic families, and what do they do, etc. So the idea of a community is dependent on a set of common values, which is essentially what makes it the community, and give them a chance to trust, etc. Well, so what's the difference then between Josiah Royce's point of view and James that essentially recognizes this as a conflict? That's kind of hard to see. Clearly, there is a difference between them with regard to truth itself. But James describes being saved, and this, in fact, I love to ask this as a quiz question, if you think it's okay. What do you believe it means to be saved in the religious sense? What do you think it means to be saved? For Josiah Royce, it means that you currently, or at least prior to being saved, you feel like the world sucks. Everything is horrible. That's not exactly how he describes it, of course. But so basically, life sucks. The world is terrible. Life sucks. All this stuff. It's very negative and so on. And then what happens is you somehow stumble into or join or get invited into a group that has a meta-narrative that you find persuasive and you believe it. So basically you're in a situation where you don't have a meta-narrative, you have no purpose in your life, you don't feel like any purpose is believable, you don't believe any of the traditional narratives, maybe. He doesn't say that. And he's not, by the way, he's not pro any particular narrative, but what he describes as being saved is when you find a group that teaches or espouses a meta-narrative that you find believable, and suddenly you now have a sense of purpose, you have a sense of who you are, you feel like now you know how you can go about achieving things according to the purpose of your life, etc. And at that point, that psychological change in your life is being saved for Josiah Royce. Granted, it might not stay that way for you. Of course, I've met a lot of people that have been saved. I remember Jonathan Edwards writing letters to young people that have been saved, and then they write back to him and say, okay, now what? It's an exuberant experience that you have, that Sunday when you're absolutely thrilled and you just, maybe the minister has laid hands on you and you're like, yes, I'm one with the Spirit, I'm one in the Lord, da, 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 da. You can sing the songs, etc. And then you wake up the next morning and it's like, what was that all about? Right? You need, okay, now I need like a rule for the rest of my life, or what does it mean to, you're not always going to be exuberantly ecstatic because of some sort of a religious experience. You've got to wake up in the morning and make breakfast for the kids, and go to work and all that sort of thing, right? So how does it tie in? So that's kind of interesting. So I highly recommend Josiah Royce. You'll enjoy prose, and you can tell that he's talking to a group, and of course it is in English. Remember, this is 1901, 1902, something of that sort. It's about the time. Later on this evening, what I'll try to do is find a link to the actual text for you, and I'll put that in my email when I send it. But Josiah Royce, pretty darn interesting character. But let me now get to the problem of truth for a pragmatist. And that's actually in our text. If you look at what is pragmatism, an important part of the article itself by James concerns the nature of truth. And we've kind of touched on this, of course, with Hegel, because this is where the problem comes up. We have an evolutionary theory here. It's the acorn instead of the clock. Everything viewed through the organic, evolving model. And that includes truth. And so James, for example, talks about specific things that have evolved with regard to truth. For example, things that we've learned in science. People in the Middle Ages, or even more recently, didn't even know about helium, for example. Now we have, if you think of it, there were experiments. The bird is dying. This is the picture. I want the full picture. Oh, that's not it. Here it is. Okay, so this is a painting where all these people were watching this experiment, and the scientist who is explaining everything right here, he has a glass container with a bird in it, and he's vacuumed out the air, and the bird is dying. And all the other people are fascinated by this experiment, but the girl, of course, is upset because the bird is dying. Okay. There's some more specifics about that. So if you think about it, oxygen is a recent discovery, relatively speaking. Clearly, the ancients talked about air. They knew that there was air, but they didn't really know what made it up. So you've got various gases, etc. It's not just one gas, it's a mixture. And we need that mixture just right, relatively speaking, within a range where you end up. Have you seen the commercial? It's really hilarious, where this guy is he's calling his insurance company because they're in a fender bender. Have you seen it? Fender bender, kind of fender bender. Let me see if I can find it. This is hilarious.
Oh no, are you okay, Mike?
Yeah, got a pretty big fender bender here.
Don't worry, State Farm's got you covered.
That's great to hear. Robin, what's going on?
Are you sure you're okay?
Yeah, I think so.
get you a tow truck, Mike.
Oh, finger going on. Finger.
Go with the one that's here to help life go right. State Farm.
So too much helium, you end up, you know, everything screws up your language. So we learn, so obviously knowledge improves over time. And what James is pointing out is, so what was true in our knowledge before is changed. We know more. And so we have truth basically expanding, right? But it's also the case that as part of that, some of the things that were believed before were false. So Hobbes thinking that our veins have air in them, that's wrong. You know, that we have blood in our veins. Or if he was looking at the tubes that were our neurons, you know, there's no air or blood in our neurons, right? So the truth that people will vouch for at a particular time can be different as a result of experiments. So the truth changes. And if you think, well, but what do we usually mean by truth? Truth is something we think of as truth forever. It's always going to be true. And there are some such truths that we think, for example, 2 + 2 = 4. We think that that's true. We think that that was true before mathematics was invented. So it wasn't that we invented mathematics, really. It was that we discovered these mathematical arrangements. You know, we discovered that 2 + 2 = 4. You know, when we came up with math. It's not that it wasn't true before math came about, right? Or triangles, etc. You know, there's I think I can find this hopefully. I posted it, so I would be able to find it. Why is it not working? Here we go. I think this is the easiest way on Facebook to find stuff. There we go.
And over the whole world goes the cloud of hysterical joy.
World War I promised us a perpetual peace.
Our company has a new strategic initiative to increase market penetration, maximize brand loyalty, and enhance intangible assets. In pursuit of these objectives, we've started a new project for which we require 7 red lines. I understand your company can help us in this matter.
Of course. Walter here will be the project manager. Walter, we can do this, can't we?
Yes, of course. Anderson here is our expert in all matters related to the drawing of red lines. We've brought him along today to share his professional opinion.
Nice to meet you. Well, you all know me. This is Justine, our company's design specialist. Hello. We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular, some with green ink and some with transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid...
Let's not rush into any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out. At the end of the day, you are an expert.
The term red line implies the color of the line to be red. To draw a red line with green ink is, well, if it's not exactly impossible, it's pretty close to being impossible.
What does that even mean? Impossible?
I mean, it is possible. There are some people, say, suffering from color blindness, for whom the color of the lines doesn't really make a difference. But I'm quite sure that the target audience of your project doesn't consist solely of such people.
So in principle, this is possible.
I'll simplify. A line as such can be drawn with absolutely any ink, but if you want to get a red line, you need to use red ink.
Why don't we draw them with blue ink?
It still won't work. If you use blue ink, you'll get blue lines. And what exactly did you mean when you talked about the transparent ink?
How to explain? I'm sure you know what transparent means.
Yes, I do.
And what a red line means. I hope I don't need to explain to you.
Of course not.
But you need to draw red line with transparent ink.
Could you describe what you imagine the end result would look like?
Oh, come on, Anderson, what have we got here? Kindergarten.
No, I'm just trying to get...
Let's not waste our time with these unproductive quarrels. The task has been set, the task is plain and clear. Now, if you have any specific questions, then go ahead.
You're the expert here.
All right, let's leave aside the colour for the moment. You had something there also relating to perpendicularity.
7 lines, all strictly perpendicular.
To what?
To everything amongst themselves. I assumed you know what perpendicular lines are like.
Of course he does. He's an expert.
2 lines can be perpendicular. All 7 can't be simultaneously perpendicular to each other. I'll show you. This is a line, right?
Yes.
And another, is it perpendicular to the first line?
Well...
Yes, it is perpendicular.
Exactly.
Wait, I'm not done. And a third one, is it perpendicular to the first line? Yes, it is. But it doesn't cross the second line. They're both parallel. Not perpendicular.
Oh, suppose so.
There it is. 2 lines can be perpendicular.
Can I have the pen? How about this?
This is a triangle. It's definitely not perpendicular lines, and there are 3, not 7.
Why are they blue?
Indeed, I wanted to ask that myself.
I have a blue pen with me. This was just a demonstration.
That's the problem. Your lines are blue. Draw them with red ink.
It won't solve the problem.
Well, how do you know before you've tried? Let's draw them with red ink, then let's see.
I don't have a red...
You get the idea, right? Sorry. I just think that's absolutely hilarious. Plus, getting to show you this makes me feel better about spending so much time watching YouTube videos at night. Because you find little gems like this. So what we end up then with is an interesting set of dilemmas that pragmatism requires us to redefine truth, because truth today wasn't true yesterday, and more than likely won't be true tomorrow. Right? So we have to redefine truth so that we're less hesitant about accepting new truth. And what James and others like John Dewey point out is that we're psychologically attracted to truth. We would like to grow up learning what's true. George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, but then you get older and you wait a minute, no, that's just a myth. George Washington didn't probably even have cherry trees. I don't know. But in any case, as a kid, he didn't chop down his father's cherry tree and say, "I cannot tell a lie," etc. That's just a total fabrication, right? Well, crap. You get to be an adult and you find out all the things you believed as a kid were false. What's that mean? Your parents lied to you? Truth, the tooth fairy, for example, right? How many of you, when you lost your first tooth or several teeth, your mom put your tooth under the pillow for the tooth fairy? Show of hands. Is that everybody? Right? Some of you were deprived. Sorry. But if you think of it, that's actually kind of cute, as a kid. It works, too, because, when you're a kid and you lose that first tooth and you've got blood gushing out of your face, you know that's wrong, right? You've learned, blood gushing out of your face, not normal. So you go run into mom and you point out your circumstances. And mom is supposed to get upset when there's something wrong, but instead she takes a towel and stuffs it in your face and laughs and says, "You've lost your first tooth. This is a good thing." And you're, "What?" You know, and then she explains, "We can put this tooth in an envelope under your pillow, and tonight the tooth fairy will come and give you money for this." And of course, by that age, you've learned the value of money, because you can now spend it on things, and your eyes light up, because until this point, you have no way of earning this stuff. Now, all of a sudden, you do. You have a mouthful of this potential earnings here. So, of course, the next day, you're out there after you've gotten the quarter or whatever mom gave you, $10. I don't know. You're out there banging your face into the wall trying to get more of these income-producing enamel bits out of your mouth, right? And mom catches you and says, "No, you have to wait," etc. But eventually, you're going to either learn from other friends at school that, of course, one-upmanship, you know, it's not, there is no tooth fairy, it's your mother, right? So one of these days, you know, you're going to be, you know, "Here's a tooth, you know, I lost my tooth," you know, and mom will put it in the envelope, put it under the pillow, and forget to put money in the envelope. So next morning you wake up and that tooth is still there. And so the child goes to mom, looks at mom in the face and says, "The tooth fairy forgot to give me money last night." And the look on that child's face says, "I know, you are the tooth fairy." Right? So, no deal about, "You lied to me about these little, winged creatures that take your teeth," etc. And some parents, I think, are a lot worse than others in this. I know I was. I actually made a little letter from the tooth fairy that I included in the envelope for my one daughter, because I had a printer and I had the fonts and I thought it was neat. I could make it really small. So we actually had to get a magnifying glass to read it. And we explained, well, you know, tooth fairies are little,
It's so cute, though.
It was fun. She took that to school and showed it to the other kids. And the kids were upset because they hadn't gotten such letters, you know. However, eventually the kids discover that you've been lying. Same thing with Santa Claus. You know, I mean, that hurts, you know, when that kind of stuff happens. And what if you're an adult and you think there's no such thing as atoms, and then you have a friend who blows atoms up and destroys Nagasaki, hey, I'm upset now, well, no, I'm just pretending. I'm not, I wasn't alive then. So I was born in 51, so that was after that. In any case, you get the idea. Truth is a problem. So what's the pragmatist solution to this? How do you get yourself used to the idea that truth is an evolving thing? It's not something we know about once and for all. Although, of course, there are some that seem really stable, like mathematical concepts. And by the way, why is that the case? Well, it's because math isn't real. Great. Right? It's a system of signs that's invented by people. It just so happens to be incredibly useful in a lot of things, and over time becomes even more useful, etc. Right? But it's essentially an abstract system, like a game, like chess, for example. So if I'm teaching somebody how to play chess, right, and I'm explaining them, the rules or something, and I say the king can only move one space at a time, but the queen can move lots of spaces. And the guy says to me, well, you're wrong about that. I was watching a couple of people play, and the king moved more than one space. What do I do? Say, well, I'm sorry, that guy broke the rules, right? Actually, if you castle, remember that particular move, your king can move more than one space. But in any case, you get the idea, right? That's you can't break those rules because you're not playing chess, strictly speaking. So we have the same kind of problem when I come to a stop sign. A stop sign on the road means you have to stop, right? Do people always stop? No. Often we just go right, we do what they, I guess, is called the California roll, right? Just roll on through, looking both ways. Sorry I ran into you, or I ran over your foot. Sorry. But you get the idea. Those kinds of rules can be broken. On the other hand, when we say that the speed of light is 180,000 miles per second, shoot.
It's like, isn't it 3 million meters? 300 kilometers per second. Speed of light. 300,000.
This is how I remember how fast this
Marker.
And
chained. Chained like a beast in a cage.
Oh, Doctor, I feel so terrible.
There's only one answer. If I could find a way to equalize the imbalance in his cerebral spinal fluid, he'd be as right as rain. But how? How? Before it's too late.
Frederick, if only there was some way I could relieve this torture you are going through. If there was some way I could help you to relax. If only I could give you a little peace.
Can never be.
okay.
That is an intellectual question I've always wanted to ask you.
Be my guest.
Exactly how fast is the speed of light?
186,000 miles a second.
Is that right? 186,000 miles per second? So there's a meme that you could use to always remember that. However, so what do various pragmatists do? One of them argues, and this is John Dewey, that what we should do is not use the word truth anymore. Instead, we should use the concept of warranted assertion. So instead of saying we've discovered the truth about such and such, instead argue that the currently supported warranted assertion that we can make is X, whatever, right? So basically use warranted assertion. And the psychological impact of that is that since that's the currently warranted, it's warranted by the experimentation so far, right? But that leaves it open for us to discover still more intriguing results later, right? It gets, of course, even more complex when you realize that we can have multiple truths in different contexts that appear to be in conflict. Like, my favorite, the sun goes around the earth goes around the sun doesn't really move, nothing really moves, everything moves in I mean, all of these different models, and there's still models, I'm sure, waiting to be discovered, hypothesized in order to explain something, right? And each of these, as James says, are true to the extent that they enable us, I won't be able to quote him exactly, they enable us to connect parts of our experience with other parts of our experience, right? So what they mean by true isn't something like 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, 2 + 2 = 4 is certainly true, and a warranted assertion. But other things that we want to say are true work out to be true because, in my experience, that is a good description of the relationship that pertains to cause and effect, or the arrangement of things, any of those kinds of contexts, right? So that's an interesting dilemma for pragmatism. And if you think about it, it's certainly a dilemma for our culture, and gets us into all sorts of problems. The problem of how do you know which of those models is the best model? Well, what's the best model for the particular problem you're trying to solve, right? That will dictate a particular model. So there will be specific models that work better than others for specific contexts. If you're trying to figure out whether or not a particular star system has planets, from what I understand, the best model to use is the Tychonic model, where you have the Earth as a fixed center, so that you can more easily measure the kind of wobble that stars have that indicate whether or not they have planets around them and where those planets are, and so on. If you were also adding the calculations into it of the Earth's movements, say towards Orion or something, it would be just so complex you wouldn't be able to figure it out. Same thing with trying to build a building. You don't use hyperbolic geometry in order to design it, because you wouldn't be finished in your contract time. You know, there's too many calculations. The kind of computer you would need would be huge, and all you're trying to do is draw a red line perpendicular to another 7 lines. No, sorry. Sorry. Okay. So moving on. Am I in the right place? Yes. So Husserl is not really, if you think about it, it would have made sense to go right from James to Dewey. But I've got Husserl in the text, and he does come after James, as I recall. But looking at Husserl, who is Husserl? Not very many folks study Husserl anymore, but we should. Husserl. For lots of reasons. In fact, there's lots of interesting things going on with regard to Husserl. Connections. He was a mentor for Heidegger. Heidegger was one of his assistants for, I think, 3 years at Freiburg. And when Husserl retired, Heidegger took his chair. So he was not only the mentor for his assistant Heidegger, but also the predecessor of Heidegger as the head of the university in Freiburg. Also, his relationship to Sartre. Sartre was one of his students, and very much influenced, of course, by his philosophy, etc. Okay, so a couple major connections that way. There's a couple others that are pretty interesting. The first president of Czechoslovakia was one of his doctoral students, for example. Okay, so what's his significant philosophy? It's called phenomenology. And if you recall, that was part of the title of Hegel's book, The Phenomenology of Mind or Spirit. And if we look up phenomenology, it literally means the study of phenomena, or the science of phenomena, right? And this is based on Kant. So if you recall with Kant, Kant described everything that we could be aware of as phenomena. And the phenomena was the real world. I mean, that was all that we could actually see, and that was what was out there. Although remember, for Kant, that meant we couldn't know the thing in itself, we couldn't know the ego, we couldn't know the noumenon, which included God, etc. So there were very frustrating aspects of Kant, as we've talked about. But for the main part, the phenomena is reality. Remember, that's Hegel, right? You know, so this dialectical process between concepts. The concepts are. I don't think I mentioned this, but in Hegel, the concept is a concrete concept, and that sounds pretty dumb. You know, why on earth would you say a concept is concrete? Obviously, concrete is like a rock, and ideas, concepts are mental events. Well, the point that Hegel's trying to make with that is concrete. You know, the Romans invented it. It's like a liquid that you've mixed. You pour it into a mold, and then you let it set, and then it becomes hard as a rock, right? And by the way, they had terrific ways of making concrete that were really strong. So a lot of the Roman structures are still there. It's kind of amazing. Whereas I'm looking at like our new library over here, and you walk on the concrete steps, and there's cracks all over it. Pretty crappy, you know. In any case, the point is that ideas are initially fluid, don't have any structure to them. I just invented a new one myself, yogification. No, yodification. That's what I want, yodification.
Yoda?
Yeah, it's based on Yoda, right? You know, so turning somebody into an old green creature, I would call it yodification. As far as I know, I just made that word up. But guess what? As soon as you guys go out and spread that meme, it will become concrete, you know, and everybody, you know, will start showing up, you know, in references, you know, yodification, you know. It probably will change meanings, you know, so, you know, you'll, you know, see it gradually evolving, of course. It'll take on a life of its own, etc. But you get the idea. You know, this didn't exist before. Someone just comes up with the idea and spreads it, and the word becomes concrete. It won't be long before you'll be able to go and buy yodified dolls and stuff, you know. So, of course, right now you can go out and buy stuffed Yodas. I have one, actually. Got it for $5 in Las Vegas one year when the company was going out of business. What a deal, right? Because, you know, those little stuffed animals are expensive. But eventually you'll be able to find like a Trump doll with Trump's hair and ears, you know, and he'll be green, and it'll be described as the yodification doll of Donald Trump, or something of that sort, right? So there you go. That's how it works, right? Ideas, new things, but once, and by the way, you know, once everyone's using it, I wouldn't be able to turn around and say, hey, that's not what I meant when I encoded that. I was thinking, you know, very specifically, you know, turning something into a green, you know, old, you know, wise individual that sits there and says things grammatically incorrectly, right? And people will say, no, that's not the way we use it. It won't be up to me to tell people how I meant it and insist on it being that way. I'll have to go to the dictionary, and look it up and find out how's it become, what's it mean now, right, etc. So, phenomena is everything we perceive, and yet at the same time, that is the real world. It's a little bit of a leap there to see how that might work. Of course, there's all sorts of problems. If I have the idea of a unicorn, unicorns, of course, don't exist. In fact, they're the definition of the non-existing thing that we could refer to that everybody agrees with, and yet, actually, it's a lie. I have seen unicorns in movies, dead ones, lying there bleeding silver blood all over the ground, and Hagrid feeling, Summit, because Hagrid speaks grammatically incorrectly. Summit, has hurt this one, right? So, okay. So phenomenology, that's everything. Now, what's a great example of what you can do with this science? Because what Husserl wants us to do is bracket the phenomena. What does bracket mean? You could actually look it up. It's like a specific. I did look it up. Where is it? I can look that up. Nope. You have to actually look it up correctly. And I didn't. What's the right key for that? Alt F? Yeah. Alt F. Control F. Or Control F?
Yeah.
Oh, Control F. Okay, so let's.
Oh, here you have to.
Control F.
Fortune
Perfect.
There we go.
Yeah, that's how I computer.
Bracket. I want to find. This one? No. Well, that's weird. I clicked on it just about an hour ago. And now I'm not finding it. That's weird. Must be a different page. Okay. But, so basically what bracketing means, doesn't mean, what we normally mean bracketing to mean, but what we're essentially trying to do is study a particular phenomena without imposing any particular cultural interpretation on it. So how do we do that? So we want to look at it from all different points of view, not just one cultural point of view. Perfect example of that would be a book I might have already mentioned, Religion in Essence and Manifestation. So this is not by Husserl, but by another phenomenologist, Gerardus van der Loo. I never say Gerardus. Van der Loo, though. And Religion in Essence and Manifestation, and it is subtitled. Well, where's the subtitle? Doesn't say. Well, that's not fun. But it's an experiment, or not an experiment, in phenomenology. Okay, so what happens in this book and some others? Here's another one by van der Loo. So they're phenomenologists, and what they want to do is study the phenomena associated with the sacred religion. And so in this book, it's kind of like an encyclopedia of holy or sacred objects or situations. So for example, water. In every culture, water is significant. That's pretty biologically obvious why, right? But it also is associated with religion. So for example, a lot of religions immerse you in water in order to, say, baptize you, or just ordain you or something of that sort. So there are rituals in every culture associated with water, and the attempt here is to ask the people in all of those cultures what water means to them in those rituals, or what water means to them in that religious belief in their own words, right? So we're not going to put ideas in their head to find out what they think of water. Instead, we're going to just gather all of the phenomena as perceived by individuals in their various cultures. And then we're bracketing it. So we're not going to look at that and say, gee, that's similar to, no, don't do that. Just gather it, gather their thoughts, gather their thoughts, gather their thoughts, and then you just have all of these examples of the phenomena, right? And then we're not going to impose our own interpretations on them, right? Then you do the same thing with things like blood. So blood is another one that's absolutely essential in every human culture. So there are associations and rituals. Do you extract blood from someone, or if you get blood on you, does that mean you have to kill someone, or you have to go wash yourself if you've got, you're contaminated, or all those rituals? What do those imply, right? So you just gather all of those, right? Bread, is bread important in every culture? Probably. Relationships, marriage. Is marriage a religious event? You betcha. It's a very significant one. In fact, just yesterday I read an article that in the country of Benin, it is now a stoning to death. Yes? Have you seen it? You're smiling like it's a stoning to death offense for you to commit adultery or to be gay. In Benin. Just read it. It's not my fault. Spelling Benin. This is the picture that I saw. Oh, sorry, not Benin. Sorry. Remember, check everything I say, because I'm getting old enough that my mind doesn't really remember everything. So Brunei, where is Brunei? Philippines? Where is it? I have no clue where that is.
It's in Asia.
Yeah. Maybe I used the Sultan of Brunei. Interesting. So individuals found guilty of the offenses will be stoned to death. Not that I'm planning on committing adultery or being gay, but if I were, I'm certainly not going to visit that country. Actually, I'm not going to visit any country that stones people to death for any reason, actually. Pretty interesting. So yes, sex has religious implications, etc. So that's kind of interesting. Okay. how are you guys doing with your term papers? I should, if you know, the line I have here, to encourage other faculty that look at my syllabi to think that I'm doing a good job. You know. Of course, if you're talking with some other friends about your term paper and sharing your paper so that they can make comments and so on. Any of you having concerns? I just totally made this line up. I don't know what the heck that means. You know, so, you know, it looked good to me though. You know, readdress your concerns. You know, because earlier you obviously had concerns, right? Didn't I say?
When our groups were assigned.
When groups were assigned, you might have had concerns. Maybe I forgot to put that in there. But, you know, the idea, of course, is that there's, you know, this is some sort of dialogue that's going on between you and the other members of your project group, you know, et cetera. Remember, you're actually writing your own paper and you get your grade for your own paper. But, you know, I'm trying to look pedagogically on the top,
Salutes
you know.
to the camera.
You know how many people are going to watch this video? Zero. You know, because every once in a while I check some of my videos to see, you know, what did I say in this, you know, because I'm talking about Nietzsche and I talked about Nietzsche before. I don't want to repeat myself, so I'll like go and I'll listen, and as I'm watching it, I realize no people have watched this video.
They're first now.
You know, and so, yeah, I'm okay. No one's going to watch it. And so that's okay. Okay, but so next class we'll look at John Dewey. And no, Bertrand Russell's not an American pragmatist, but yes, we're getting down to the wire here. This is the 20th lecture. We've only got 10 more sessions, and two of those sessions are the final session, which we really won't do as a class. Instead, we'll do a video that, you know, whoever comes, it's up to you. It'll be voluntary. It is the schedule. My schedule's right. I just got the updated final session schedule because my original information was based on Eagle River, and of course, I just realized, hey, you know what? You're not going to be here. You have to do it according to the main campus schedule. But that didn't change us. We're still meeting here on Tuesday, the April 30th, for a double session. And I'll bring some movies, like maybe Wittgenstein. I have the movie Wittgenstein, which is pretty interesting, actually. A biopic or whatever. It doesn't actually contain Wittgenstein as an actor, but he does a really good job. Although he says in the interview afterwards that he had no clue what he was talking about. You know, because he's quoting Wittgenstein, you know, and he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. But that's funny, actually. So yeah, we're getting close to the end here. So we only really have eight sessions to go. Yes?
Were there any changes to the paper, or is it still 3,000?
No changes.
Okay.
No changes.
I already said at the beginning.
Maybe like the day before they're due, I'll say, on second thought.
The day before.
I'm just kidding. Won't change any of the requirements.
Okay.
You know, I might say either do your term paper 3,000 words or give me a lemon meringue pie.
Ooh, yes. Okay. Oh, actually, I'll bring snacks. I just wanted to see hi. This week I'm going to see my grandma.
Oh, say hi to her for me.
I
I miss her.
Oh, Mr. Jamison said hi. She'll
Yeah.
love that meeting.
She's a good friend.
Thank you.
Totally. Hey, at least if you've been reading the news, remember the anthropology teacher apparently was sexually harassing seven of his students.
I heard it was 9. I read
9?
Yeah.
Well, they'll probably start, hey, he sexually harassed me too.
Some of the
Almost
stories
the beginning of the class, just like for 30 minutes.
There's a table out in the hallway here where they're talking about sexual harassment, etc. And I was thinking, I've never been sexually harassed. Maybe they could sign me up.
Oh no.
Have information sessions, I mean, it's legal to be harassed. It's just not legal to be the harasser, right? So. Maybe that's not a good